No, I'm checking your heart. I was a medic in Salt Lake for a few years. One rainy day, my partner and I got dispatched to a fairly upscale neighborhood on a call of chest pain. Chest pain means flashing lights and sirens. We quickly arrive in front of a pretty nice house and find a woman standing at the curb with 2 suitcases packed, already a red flag. I shut down the siren but kept the lights going for safety. We ask if she called 911 and she confirms. She steps into the ambulance, sits on the bench, and asks us to get going. I tell her we need to do a full workup before we leave, so we can provide care en route and take her to the right facility. She says she doesn't really have chest pain, she has a procedure scheduled at the hospital, and she wants me to turn off the flashing lights so her neighbors don't notice and ask her questions. Obviously, this is EMS abuse, and I tell her so. Suddenly her chest pain is back. So I say I need to get vitals and start an ECG. She protests again, mentioning the start time for her appointment in less than 30 minutes, and so I ask her point blank, do you need medical attention or do we need the police? I proceeded to do a full workup, in front of her house, taking my sweet ass time, asking enough questions to make her eyes roll, and leaving the strobe lights on the whole time so the neighbors would see. And she was late to her appointment because we admitted her to the hospital through the ER instead of the front doors. Now to the comments. If you have a procedure coming up, and now you developed chest pain, that procedure is going to get tossed. No anesthesiologist is gonna touch the patient without full cardiac workup and another cardiac clearance from cardiologist. Exactly. Even the most minor thing is gonna get rescheduled and she's gonna have to get clearance from her medical team. Had some coffee just a sip 4 hours ago, get outta here. My paramedic brother finally got out of the profession and went back to firefighting. He was old school when you were a firefighter first. When he was reprimanded for suggesting a frequent patient may need psychological help instead of an ambulance every other day, he threw in the towel at the workload and just decided to go inside burning buildings instead. My Sil's ex-in-laws used to live around the corner. Her ex-mill was huge, and kept falling out of bed and having to call the fire department to help her up. It took 6 firefighters, and happened so often that they knew her by name. I always felt really bad for them. The firefighters, not her in-laws. I wonder if they consider those easy calls or if they'd rather run into a burning building. I'm a firefighter/paramedic and have lots of frequent flyers. Everyone on my crew would much rather respond to a house fire than a frequent flyer. That's not really a fair question though, since we'd all like to fight a house fire than literally any other call. We'd actually prefer to do it instead of having no calls and sleeping through the night. Most firefighters eagerly look forward to the fire calls and they're seen as the best ones to respond to. I don't wish a fire on anyone, but if it has to happen, I hope it happens when I'm working and it's in my district so I'm on the truck that gets there first. Does she realize ambulances won't take her home? Something I learned which is kinda cool. In the UK there is a dedicated part of the ambulance service which collects vulnerable people for hospital appointments if they can't drive themselves. Source: my housemate works for them while she's studying to be a full paramedic. Yup, Wisconsin in the US has those too. We call them cabulances, cab and ambulance. Similar MC, night shift on the Band-Aid wagon. We get a lot of calls arising from police encounters, usually involving warrants/arrests, that suddenly precipitate urgent medical issues. It's a well-established fact that hospitals have more comfortable beds and better turkey sandwiches than jail. And if you're lucky, your offense/warrant is relatively minor, and the police department is busy, they won't have the resources to hold you in custody through a 3-hour chest pain workup in the ER. Get out of jail free card. Get dispatched emergently to a call for difficulty breathing and chest pain after unsuccessfully running from police. On arrival, young 20s dude clearly not in medical distress, prefect vital signs. Insists he needs eval at hospital. Shift has been long, full of BS and abuse, and this call is holding the unit over past shift end time. QMC, in my area there is often kind of an unspoken understanding, for better or worse, when it comes to emergent incarceratus calls. You do the assessment, keep treatments minimal while fulfilling ethical and legal requirements, transport quickly and try to free up the resources for actual emergencies. The medically stable subject is often directed to triage if ER is busy, then walks out after EMS leaves and before being admitted to a room. That's definitely what the expectation was in this case. Wasn't having it? Chest pain / diff breathing differential is heart attack, arrhythmias, blood clots in lungs, collapsed lung, etc. Full assessment, cardiac monitor, 12-lead EKG, vascular access. Dude gets all confused why he's suddenly covered in wires and getting stuck with needles. Sir, the symptoms you're telling us are highly concerning for conditions that are immediately life-threatening. We are taking you at your word and taking every measure to ensure your safety and survival. Deliver him to ER and he has to go to a room due to 4 in place and cardiac monitoring. Nurse is pissed off but police are entertained and decide they have the resources to sit with the fellow through his workup to give moral support and make sure he comes out okay. Oh, and to take him the rest of the way to jail when he gets discharged, that too. Where I worked, we would release on citation if the person looked like they were actually in need of being admitted but would keep in custody for the 2 hours in the ER if we thought they were just malingering. The result was that the guys who thought they were clever ended up spending more time in cuffs because the delays would often put them at the back of the line for seeing a judge. Spend an hour waiting in the room with them, then pretend to leave but wait by the exit for long enough for them to miraculously recover and leave. We had one woman who would call 911 with an emergency every time her husband had an appointment because his chair lift from the porch to the driveway was broken and she didn't want to spend the money to get it fixed. So, she'd just have whoever responded carry him out. Eventually we, fire department, were the ones called for a lift assist, and unbeknownst to anyone else at the station, one of our guys who responded managed a quick fix on the lift, but told her it wasn't going to last and she needed to have it repaired. A couple months later she calls the station and demands we come out and fix that lift again because XXX ambulance was coming to transport him and they refused to lift him anymore. She was nasty right from the get-go and I ended up taking her number and telling her I'd call her back. After a bunch of phone calls, I found out the above, plus XXX ambulance was not coming to transport. That company is owned by one of our officers. I called him and he immediately recognized the address and said they were blacklisted. Long story short, one of our higher-ups ended up calling her back and telling her to fix her own dang chairlift, and our guys were told, do not do repairs on things anymore, no good deed goes unpunished. The entitlement. Geez, an ambulance ride is way more expensive than a taxi. In my country, for example, the insurance always pays for ambulance rides. But it's really bad to abuse them. And yes, they are supposed to take you to the best location according to your symptoms, so if it's clear that someone is abusing them, they can totally unload the person at some random hospital's ER. There is a family story I tell for context on how expensive ambulance rides are if you're an American with coverage and required to take one. My brother was in his welding class at his tech school, and they gave him a faulty one, by accident, with a fault in the grounding wire. By pure chance he also had a hole in his glove, so got a very large electrical dose and blacked out for a moment. This is on the school's faulty equipment on school grounds. My brother was going to have the whole checkup and ER visit covered. They drive him less than half a mile to the local hospital. 4 months after, that 1/2 mile ride kept getting billed to us, which we promptly gave to the dean of students, which came to approximate $4,000 after insurance. Because this hospital had my brother's insurance on record and kept trying to bill his for the visit, we had to call a hospital ombudsman to get them to straighten out the billing. Should have taken her to a different hospital in the other direction. Ma'am, this hospital has a better cardiac wing, they'll get you sorted out. I doubt the EMTs have that much discretion, but it would be funny. They do in the UK. Source: partner is a paramedic, and has taken patients to the hospital that they need rather than the one they want. Ugh. I hate those patients. When they do shit like this, I always bluntly ask why they called an ambulance and not a taxi. A ride in the ambulance is around $800. A taxi may be $30. But most people have insurance that covers the fee. There should be some mechanism to file a notification with the insurance that the patient's claim is not legitimate. There absolutely is. My mother had to pay for an ambulance out of pocket because they, and she, didn't think it was medically warranted, but the doctor who called it for her did. If they could annotate it as not required for her, they should be able to annotate it that way for people actually abusing the system.